Hello, everyone. It is Partners to Powerhouse. I'm Zena.
And I'm Chris.
We get to be together live on social media, on live stream. Isn't this cool? This is the first time. I know I've been doing podcasts for with American Dream Makers and having that. But how fun is it that I've got my hubby in the same room with me? Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I also have a surprise for you guys. So Partners to Powerhouse, I have to say that we believe that every marriage has potential to have love and passion in it. And not only can you thrive in your relationship, but you can excel in your business and in your ministry endeavors. And you can go from partners to powerhouse and live out the purpose that God has designed so that you can leave an impact in this world. So this platform here, Partners to Powerhouse, is all about helping your marriages gain the tools, the strategies, the discussions, the things that are needed to take your partnership and become a powerhouse couple. So before I bring on my special surprise guests, well, I guess it's not a whole lot of surprise because I did put it out on social media. But anyways, before I bring it on,
It's not a surprise.
I guess it's not that big of a surprise, but it is going to be a surprise because you are going to love them. But before I do that, I am going to play my intro video. So hang in there. Here is my intro video. All right, we are back. Chris, are you excited about this? Like,
Yeah, we're live. I'm so excited.
my poor husband, I drag him into all sorts of things, and he's just so awesome to just come along and with my crazy ideas, you guys. So without further ado, I want to introduce Don and Nicole, our friends of ours that we have met recently, but I feel like we've known each other way longer than just recently. But they are an amazing couple, and they are a powerhouse couple as well. So tonight we are actually going to be talking about partnerships and whether partnerships are actually needed to succeed in your marriage, in your business, and in your ministry. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Don and Nicole Purdom, right? Yay!
Hey, everybody.
Nice to be here.
Great to be with you all.
Good to have you. And so you guys are back east, correct?
Yep, we're in little old Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Lancaster. Wow.
Lancaster.
Oh, Lancaster.
Yeah, you don't want to mess that one up with the locals.
yeah.
You'll get in big trouble.
They'll tell you all about it.
Well, we can understand that because we live in Prescott, but most people from out of town call it Prescott. So we totally get it. Lancaster. So we're going to have to practice so that when we come out to Lancaster and visit you, we won't get tarred and feathered.
Well, they'll just know you're not from around here.
Yeah, which sometimes is not good, right? So.
Oh, no, they'll love your dollars. It's a big tourist area.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, how long have you lived in Lancaster?
Combined,
15 years?
yeah, 15 years combined.
Combined, yeah.
Wow. 15 years combined. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a long time for sure. So Don and Nicole, tell us, when did you guys meet and how long have you been married for?
Dear, I'm going to let you take the reins.
Oh, wow, because I remember dates and things like that. I'm a detailed person. We met September 1st, 1991 at church, surprisingly enough. I didn't like him at first, so it took a few months for me to come around.
She was in love with me from the get-go. Don't believe that.
Anyway, We started dating in February of 92, Valentine's weekend. We're engaged a month later. I knew if I dated him, I'd marry him. We were engaged a month later. And then a year and a half later, we got married. We celebrated our 30th anniversary back in July.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
30 years.
Thank you.
Yep.
30 wonderful years,
Yeah.
I might add.
Yep.
Wow. 31. All wonderful.
All wonderful.
All wonderful.
Not that it was always peaches and cream, but
Or
they were
easy.
wonderful.
But yeah, I wouldn't trade it
Sure,
for the
it's a
world.
great testimony.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. So we actually met on a blind date. So, so we think that we don't think, we know that God orchestrated it, because I don't think we would have dated had that not occurred, had we not been introduced by somebody else. And that somebody else actually didn't know us that well. She only met us a couple of times and then just said, hey, I think you guys should meet up. So we always say it was a God thing.
Yeah.
And then it turned out we went to the same church. So,
Yeah.
but we never saw each other at the church. So that was kind of a crazy thing. That's why we're like, this was a God thing.
Yeah. A big one, actually. You didn't have to negotiate who's leaving what church to go where.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a blessing.
That was absolutely a blessing for sure. And so it's been a wild ride for sure. Very much, I would say that I love my husband more today than I did the day I married him. But that was not because of ease or anything like that. It was because we put in the work and the effort and the persistence and the commitment to it. And so with that, we wanted to have the discussion tonight on partnerships. So our title is Partners to Powerhouse. And so as you can imagine, the question at hand is a partnership really that important in a marriage? Because you know what? We are Americans, and we can be happy individually. We can live our own lives and have our own dreams and just share that together. I mean, that's kind of the premise that some people feel, is that marriage is really just somebody to come home and share the accomplishments that you have, but you don't necessarily have to be partners to achieve it, that you can be individuals within the marriage and still have success. So that's the question that I'd like to have a discussion on. So I don't know, anyone want to go first on that?
Well, I'll just jump right in. I don't personally believe in the Western idea of this rugged individualism. I think it's destructive to marriage. And I say that for a couple of reasons. The first is, in Genesis, we see that God made man, and he took from man and made woman, and he united the two in one flesh through the marriage relationship. And we see this carried all the way through to the book of Ephesians, where in Ephesians 5, the Apostle Paul talks heavily about how a husband and a wife are to relate with one another. And why that's so important is because as Christ is head of the church, so the marriage relationship resembles the relationship that Jesus has with his bride, the church. And it's very much a partnership. It's a deep, intimate relationship. And if you're coming at this, from my view, as an individual, then you're setting your marriage up for failure. If it's just, I'm doing my thing, she's doing her thing, and we come together and we share a story, well, there's no bond there. There's no intimacy out of that that's created. It's just no different than a friend who you see every couple of weeks or few months and just say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Great, I'll keep you in my prayers and I'll see you in a few months again.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want to challenge this thought a little bit, though. So for those, and it's good. All four of us here are Christians, and so we absolutely come with a viewpoint that God established marriage, and so we have that understanding. But what if to the listener, to the person watching this, and they say, you know what, that's a bunch of hogwash, Dawn, because I'm not a Christian and I have a fantastic marriage. And what you say, I don't necessarily, agree with. So So on that premise, can you still have a fulfilling marriage and not have the premise of having the Christian viewpoint?
Well, I think again, you're at everybody's going to look at this through their own individual lens. I am pretty dogmatic about God established marriage for a purpose and a reason. And at the end of the day, can you have satisfaction and fulfillment without that? I suppose you say you can. I don't know. I've yet to personally find a marriage that's lasted as long as our marriage has, where that's been the case. Even in the church, quite frankly, because divorce is just as high, if not higher, in the church than it is outside the church. So I think the principles are really what we're going for here. And the principle is that if you're a team, and a team does not, it may be made of its individual parts, and those individual parts will then work to complement the other one's strengths and weaknesses. And to me, that's what builds the transparency, confidence, trust, and intimacy that makes for a thriving marriage. We've all seen marriages go 40, 50 years and they're miserable in them. And I don't know about you. I don't want to be miserable in my marriage. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy my spouse. I want to love her. I want to be there to celebrate her good times, and I want to be there to be a shoulder that she cries on when she needs it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right on. What I would say, I have known, or we have known some couples and people that have told us about longer marriages that we knew them well enough to know that they really didn't ascribe to being Christians, but they did adopt a lot of, probably unknowingly, that the Bible has those in their principles, and they work,
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say about those people, those marriages, is that they probably don't really even know how much they're missing out when you have the full package, when you have the Lord over it, and then His design, and you follow it as a couple, as a relationship. It's amazing that He said that He wanted us to join Him in Him, together in Him, and that we're all united together. And then He established marriage, which is intimacy with our partner, but it's in Him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing.
So then with that, what is partnership then? What exactly is partnership? I know we talked about that God established it, but what is it exactly?
Do you want to take a stab at this and I'll compliment you?
Well, sure. This is how I've always looked at our marriage. So I'll give you the example of us. We, as Don mentioned, we're a team. We work together. We go through the highs, the lows, and everything in between together. He is my partner in life. He's my, ride or die, if you will. And I mean, I think from the day we got married, I viewed him as he's my best friend. When he struggles, I'm there for him. When he mentioned before, when I'm struggling, he's there for me. We are one. We come together and we are one. So, and we go through this life together. It's not him or me versus him. We go through this together. That's partnership. That's how I view it.
Yep. I view it as also, if you're going to build trust with your partner and your spouse, you have to get to that point to where you can be truthful and transparent, and you can get to that place of vulnerability with your spouse. Because if you can't be vulnerable with your spouse, if they don't know your most intimate secrets, not that they know every thought you have, and they probably don't want to know, but I think the point is that when you have that, it changes the dynamic so deeply, so that if I trust Nicole with the most vulnerable fear or the inhibition in their life, and I just know healing doesn't happen by itself. It's impossible. But when you have someone who loves you that deeply and you can be that open with, it changes everything.
Mhm.
And that to me is a partnership. It's not just making money and paying the bills. That's just the surface level part of it. There's the all underlying thing about that kind of vulnerability, that kind of trust that just magically changes a relationship into something that if you haven't experienced it before, it'll amaze you.
Yeah, that's definitely a great way to explain your partnership. So you guys, so you have been in ministry together,
Mhm.
and you've also owned businesses as well. Tell us a little bit about how partnership has played a role in your business and in your ministry, not just your marriage.
Wow, that's a great question, because what I was saying a minute ago really gets into the heart of this.
Mhm.
When I was going through undergrad and graduate school to go into the pastorate, I was also a chaplain in the Army. And one of the things that I learned really quickly is that when a family unit is going through failure, and if enough of them at one time are going through failure, it affects in the military the entire unit morale. You can see men and women performance levels significantly drop. In the business world, I've watched this happen over and over again, that if a spouse, whether it's the husband or the wife, is overly engaged in the business and neglects their family, at a certain point, resentment and bitterness sets in on the other spouse's part. And that could lead to ending that relationship through divorce. And if divorce happens, there's a good chance, a possible chance, that everything you worked for in the business that you sacrificed, that partner said, I'm sacrificing this and our relationship so our business will work so that we can have all of our dreams. And all of a sudden those dreams went poof, they're gone. Yeah, that's a real challenge. So for us, when we saw all this going on around us, when I started my first business, it was in 2005. I was actually working as a director of development for a large national nonprofit. And I had left that job to plant a church, and I was in school at Dallas Theological Seminary at the time. And we got on the back of a horse. I got on the back of a horse. It was Memorial Day 2005. And long story short, Don will never get on a horse again. I shattered my right wrist, got a rod, a plate, 6 screws, broke my left shoulder, and Nicole experienced for worse for about a year. And that was the environment that we started the first business out of, because it was out of desperation. I had to do something, but I didn't feel like I had marketable skills to enter the workforce. Not in the traditional sense, you go to college, you get a degree in business or marketing or whatever, engineering or something like that, and you go into a professional field. It just didn't feel like those were the cards for me. So when I started my first business, it just exploded. And that would go on to evolve into another business, which evolved into another business. And then it turned out, I don't like what I'm doing, so I'm going to go try another thing in this business. And what we have since learned is a couple of things. Number one, in those early years, I struggled sharing everything with Nicole because I knew she wasn't where I was. I was much more risk averse than she was. I mean, risk tolerant than she was.
I was not so much. I liked, the steady, comfortable, tried and true. This is how you do things. Not, just jump off the side of the cliff and hope there's a safety net somewhere.
Yeah.
Hey, Michelle. Michelle is from Rolette, Texas. Thanks for being here, Michelle.
Oh, Rowlett. Hey, Rowlett.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome, Michelle. We lived in Forney for 12 years.
Yep.
So I'm sure you know, Michelle, where Forney is, just south of Rockwall.
Wow.
And of course, those were where I had the majority of my businesses, which were in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, all over the Metroplex. So anyway, the thing was, I didn't know what to share with her because I didn't know. It really was, in a small way, a trust issue, but wasn't trust between me and her. It was fear between me and God of how much do I want to share with her, because I don't know if she can handle all of it. So I finally got to a point to where the ups were good and really high. The downs were really low in the valley. And it was in those lows that I learned to confide in her, regardless of whether she could handle it or not. Because who else was I going to share that with? I wasn't going to go share that with people in the business world, especially my competitors, or let the rumor mill start, and that would hurt my business even more. So she was really all I had. I didn't have a true mentor that could help me because that's just, again, I just did it, you know? And that really solidified our marriage. That really brought us closer together, not further apart, when I finally got over the fear of sharing things with her. But that came with its own set of consequences for Nicole that she had to work through.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I was always you do the thing that is dependable. I entrepreneurship, that was so foreign to me. And then I met Don and married him. And like he said, it kind of came out of necessity because of the situation we found ourselves in. We had to do something. We had 2 little boys. We had a house. We had to pay the bills. And it was just this whole new world, and I wanted security. For me, it was, okay, I'm looking to Don to provide the security for me. And then, when you're starting a business, there's not a lot of security starting out, especially. And you have great highs and great lows. So God thrust me into a whole new environment, if you will. And it was really, having to trust Don as my husband, but really having to trust God to provide what we needed, because some months, it was pretty lean. So,
Yeah.
Acceptable risk is one of the terms that investors use.
yeah.
We don't know that the risks were always acceptable. They were just not. I just didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's not uncommon so the Bible says that if you get married, there will be trouble. So that is that verse that it's like, it's a guarantee. If you get married, there's going to be trouble some point in your marriage.
Yeah.
And you add the ingredient of entrepreneurship along into that adds another element to it, because now, like what you guys are describing, you are not in the traditional of husband is clocking in and clocking out, wife is going to work, clocking in and clocking out, and now you can leave it at work and be at home and just be a family and not talk about work. When you are an entrepreneur, you are all in all the time. And so that is something that we have found as real estate agents, that it is a almost 24/7 job. I mean, other than when we're sleeping, but sometimes it feels like you're not sleeping because you're staying up late doing offers or meeting the deadlines that are needed because there's time constraints. And if you are a spouse that doesn't understand that, and like you said, sometimes it's lean. So sometimes the commissions don't come in when you need it to. And you're like, I've got $2 in my bank account. How am I going to pay the bills tomorrow? And you're just sweating it. And you're right, and usually it's not always that both partners get on the same page right away, that they see the risk, because I am probably more like Dawn in that I am more apt to take risks than Chris. Like that was not his natural tendency to do that. And part of that is, upbringings, part of that is whatever our personalities or that sort of thing. And so in the beginning, it was definitely scary probably for Chris. Like, what are you doing? Why are you spending money we don't have? And I'm thinking, but we need to, because how are we going to build the business if we don't do this? If we don't spend it on marketing, if we don't spend it, like, to me, it wasn't a cost. It was the investment and part of the business. So to me, the business is going to die if we don't do this, where he's like, but we're not going to be able to pay the mortgage if you do this, or how are we going to pay, the other things that are needing to be paid. And so for those of you that are watching, whether you're watching live right now or you're on the replay, have you experienced this? Are you a couple that is also running a business together? And even if you're both not in the business together, you're still in the business together. Like even if you're not both actively, it affects you wholeheartedly. Would you say so, Nicole? Because even though you are active, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it definitely affected me because, like I said, we're a team. So even though he was the one running the business, I was still in there with him, the day to day, hearing about, seeing how it affected us, seeing how it affected our family, the decisions or just however the business was doing. That had a direct effect.
And
everything.
then there was a lot of moments where, well, I'm not sure what I need to do, so I'm going to do. Here's my own analysis of the cost benefit. I don't know how accurate this is or how right or wrong it is, but I put it down on paper and said, well, okay, there were times that the cons outweighed the pros, but I felt like, darn it, the pro has a stronger upside though. So we're going with it. And then it would come back and bite me in the rear. and it, it hurts sometimes. And I had to learn some things in business the hard way. And for many times, and for many, even with mentors, that's just the way it is. You become a good business person by figuring it out and as a practitioner. There's great theory. You can read business theory and stories and stuff everywhere, but until you're the one doing it and you're the one that's responsible for it, it has a way of changing all of that. So I would say for us, though, in our marriage, it brought us closer together. It didn't tear us apart, where we saw the inverse of that with so many couples. And I think that comes back to what I said earlier. It's how we viewed our marriage. We weren't two separate entities. We were one. Even though I might have been the one running the business and doing everything, it had an impact on her and what happened at home. And so I brought her into that as much as I possibly could. I think also that recognition of at the end of the day, I can't do this without her. If I think for 1 second she doesn't have my back, we're not going to make it, because it's going to eat me alive on the inside. And I would say to a lot of wives, if you're thinking about the experience you're going through with your husbands, many husbands, not all, but many husbands, they need and want the affirmation and the respect of their wife. And if they feel that what they're doing is detrimental to that and that their wife doesn't support them, but they are at a point that there's really no going back, the two options that you have as a couple is to fight like cats and dogs until it's over and let resentment and bitterness take over, or to sit down and find a pastor or a counselor and someone that can help you work through the resolution of those feelings for both of you, so that you can figure out how to get on the same page and move forward. Because if he doesn't feel like she's supporting him, at some point he is going to feel like a failure in some way. He may be really successful in his business life, but what she doesn't know is he may feel like a failure in their marriage. And there's nothing more detrimental to a marriage than one of the two spouses feel like they failed.
Yeah, you touched on a very important concept there for sure. Dr. John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which I know a lot of people have read. And he says that in order to motivate a man, or for the motivation for a man is to feel needed, and the motivation for a woman is to be cherished. And so if either one of us are missing those ingredients, it's easy to, if I'm not feeling cherished, then I'm not going to make him feel needed or wanted, and vice versa. Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, who wrote the book Love and Respect, talks about love and respect. And it's the same thing. You get on that crazy cycle. If a woman doesn't feel loved, then she's going to, she naturally disrespects him out of like, well, I'm not feeling love, so I'm not going to give you what you need. And a man needs to be respected. And if he doesn't feel respected, then he's like, well, I'm not going to give her love. And then next thing you know, you're on this crazy, crazy cycle. And one of you has to get off of the merry-go-round. And who's going to be the first one to do that? You know, and I love that Dr. Emerson said, how did he put it? Who's the first to get off the merry-go-round?
The more mature person.
The more mature person gets off the merry-go-round. And so I find it very interesting as you're talking about, you know, how it was very difficult in the beginning with this business venture, and Nicole isn't quite feeling comfortable. So she's not feeling secure, which is a big need for one. She has to feel love and she has to feel secure, where a man needs to be respected and feel needed. So she's not feeling secure. She's like, what are you doing, Dawn? This is not making me feel easy. And yet Dawn's like, but this is what we have to do. So at what point, Nicole, well, before you answer this, our coach, Coach Michael Burt and his wife, Nicole Burt. So he has a program called Monster Producer. So she wrote a book called Living with a Monster. And so she was just like you, Nicole, and that she's living with this man who is taking all these risks and doing all these crazy maneuvers to build the business. And she's just hanging on for dear life. And I love what she said in the book. She said that she finally figured out that she needed to not fight it anymore, that she needed to just basically not like give in and give up on her dreams, but to just see and trust that he knows what he's doing, that I'm going to go, instead of fighting it, I'm going to go along with it. So at what point, Nicole, you must have came to that conclusion. So what was that?
Yeah. I mean, after a lot of praying, I mean, we talked about, you know, our faith, you know, a believer, and God really had to show me how he wired my husband. I think the biggest thing for me was figuring out, you know, what it means. Okay, I have a husband who's an entrepreneur, and it's not just a title. There's so much more to it. Figuring out what that means. And like I said, how God wired him. He is the type of person that is just, okay, gets an idea and he's excited about it and wants to go, you know, for it. And the risks, oh, you know, we're just going to do it. We're not going to worry about the risks, and we're going to see what happens. So once I started to kind of figure that out and realize that, okay, this is who my husband is, this is how he's wired, and that's who God gave me, it helped me to really kind of like trust him more, because I understood his heart and his mind. Not that it was always easy. I mean, you know,
but there's an instrumental piece of the story that you typically share that. So
the biggest thing I struggle with, I mean, it got so bad. And this is really where the turning point was for me, because I have the tendency to want to, you know, control things. And like I said, I always like the consistency, that security. And I reached a point in you know, at some point in this where things weren't going well. The finances were horrible. Business wasn't going well. And I was trying to hold on so tightly. And it was like everything just was like quicksand falling through my hands. And God really showed me that, number one, I was in control of very little. And I was relying on Dawn to provide what we needed. And God said, no, you're looking at the wrong person. You're not supposed to look at your husband. I am your provider. I have to be the one. You need to trust me. And really, it was a pivotal moment for me to say, wow, you know, yes, he's my husband. Lord, you've given him to me as my partner in life. But God, you're the one that provides all things. And when I finally let go and realized that, things started to change. I mean, it was
our finances began to change.
Yeah.
Business opportunities came in that out of suddenly nowhere. And I'm keep thinking, where did this come from? What? Oh, what? And then we sat down and started comparing notes, and we went, oh my goodness, we missed it. we've been so focused on temporal things that we forgot the eternal part that is much more important. And when we got our heart and our mind and our soul right with God, all of the other things just came.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was
I can't
amazing.
explain it. I can't say that it works like that for everybody. I can never promise that that's just what's going to happen to anybody watching this, but I can say that's what happened for us. And it brought a lot of hope and a lot of, and again, it drew us together because we're talking about intimacy now. We're not talking about just being transparent, and we're not just talking about having conversations together about we're really living the hard thing together, and we're trusting each other through it.
Yeah. And something else I'd mention too is, I think back on those times and, we might not have had any money to really do anything. I mean, it would have been something as simple as, spending time together we would take a walk. We had a park that was on the other side of our neighborhood. We would just go for a walk and we would share how we were feeling. And, we would acknowledge that, hey, maybe financially things aren't good right now, but we would dream together.
Yep.
That is so important. Spending time and don't be afraid to dream.
Yeah.
Because you got to have that. You have to have something to look forward to. You have to have a goal in mind and sharing that with your spouse. And it's another way of just connecting and building that intimacy.
And God revealed to us that our dreams were the same.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't that?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like he entwined your hearts.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Here's what, obviously the scripture says to seek first the kingdom of God and all these things will be added unto you. So that was the ingredient, like you said, that you had missed. And we all missed that part. But when you said you don't know how it actually works, it just did for you. And you can't guarantee it for anybody else. I'm going to go for it, Dawn. I'm going to guarantee it. Because God says that. And not only that, but when you are in alignment with him and you're in alignment with each other, now you're not fighting against the goat. What, kicking against the goat? Wasn't there a term?
Kicking against the
goat.
goats.
You're not kicking against the goat. You're not pulling. Now you're ready to receive what God was he'd already planned the blessings for us. Jesus came so that we would have an abundant life. He didn't say, I came to give you a mediocre life. He didn't say any of that. And abundant doesn't always mean money. Money's only a small aspect of abundance. Right. There's abundance of joy. There's abundance of peace. There's abundance of resources. There's abundance of many, many other things.
There's abundance of intimacy here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you are right. That is the secret sauce. You guys hit it right on the nose. And like I said, I'm going to be bold and claim you absolutely will see the results.
I affirmed that. What I meant was the way that happened for us. I can't guarantee what happened because somebody else is on their own journey.
Sure.
That's what I meant by that. And I would say, as long as you're being faithful to one another, you're being faithful to your cause, whatever that business is that you have, and you're being faithful to God, because it really should go God, family, business. Mm-hmm. And how many of us in the stress of it? Because again, I've been there, I've done it, I know. And now I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor. I've been a military chaplain. I get, it happened to me. Mm-hmm. And it happens to pastors every day. They put their church ahead of their relationship with God. So no one's immune from it. But when you begin to sit back and realize, wait a second, God, family, then business, if you can discipline your mind and your heart towards that and ask God to give you the faith to help you do it, through the power of the Holy Spirit, you would be amazed at what can happen.
Yeah. I'm going to break it down even further from the family. It's God, marriage, your kids, and then your business.
Absolutely.
Right? Because some people, some folks have a hard time with those priorities. Michelle says, it sounds like you pressed into the heart of God in his rhythm flow and you flowed from that. Thump, rest, and he blessed you.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. It brings
Yeah.
tears to my eyes. But
Yeah. No, Michelle,
Absolutely.
that's a great point, because we got to that point where we were broken,
Oh, yeah.
and we were broken in that we came to that realization of what we had done, and putting the business in a pedestal where it didn't belong, and putting it. I was never and that's the other thing to remember here. Whether you're the husband or the wife, whichever one of you is the business owner or the entrepreneur, this doesn't matter. The tendency is the same, that we can sometimes and oftentimes unintentionally and subtly let the business creep into a place in our life where it doesn't belong. And then we justify it. And then we double down. And then we start running into the relational problems with our spouse. But I want to tell you what, if you're having a problem with your spouse, I'll tell you who else you're probably having a problem with. God. I will guarantee you 100% of the time, if you're having a problem with your spouse, there's something in your relationship with God that's amiss.
I appreciate you going there with that. I was going to add, but you guys were saying such great things. I thought, well, I'll just wait. But we make a point to pray together on a pretty regular basis. And we spend time in the Lord together in Him. And that, and then we, just as the day goes, we communicate, and we purposefully work on communicating. I'm not good at it. Okay. I'll just lay that out there. But I'm getting better, and the Lord certainly helps us, and we're thankful.
Yeah, it is absolutely an ongoing thing. I think until the day we die, there's always, something to learn from each other, because we're constantly growing. I mean, let's face it. When we are looking at growing in the Lord and growing in the things that are good for us, I am different today than I was last year at the same date. And next year at this time, I will be different as well, because I will have grown, learned, and some things I'll be like, oh, I learned something new. So I'm going to get rid of that old stuff and I'm going to replace it with something new. And so it could surprise them that, what do you mean you don't like Brussels sprouts? You used to love Brussels sprouts. Why aren't you eating that anymore? Or, something to that fact, right? Sometimes you're like, I thought I knew you. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Zena, I also don't want to discount growing closer to God when adversity strikes.
Yes.
That's where Nicole and I have seen our most growth in our relationship with God and our growth with one another. It's not through the good times that our intimacy and our bond tightens. It's through those times that we experience those painful moments, those what did I do moments, what happened, where am I at? God, what do you want me to do? And then we're praying together, we're praying individually. And then we're also coming to that point of saying to one another, what is the answer? Because what I have found is Nicole might not be a business person, but she's incredibly gifted and intelligent in many ways. And I lean on her and I listen to her because she's got so much to add and so much to say. And this is where the two became one. To me, this is the most important part. This doesn't even matter if you're a business owner or not. This is just life. Your spouse completes you. God gave you your spouse for that reason. Remember when He made Adam and Eve, He said with Adam, I'm going to take from you a bone from your rib to make a woman. Why? Because she will be a helper to you. Nicole's not my adversary. She's not my opponent. She is my gift.
Absolutely. John Lyle says, hi, John. Glad you're here. John Lyle says,
Hey, John.
Hi, John.
Pray together, stay together. That is very true, John.
Amen.
Absolutely. Very, very true. There's absolutely power of prayer and that connection together. Now, for those that are not Christians, I will say, even if you don't pray together like to the Lord, but when you find ways to truly connect with each other, that absolutely forms an intimacy like you wouldn't form with anybody else. And Don, I love that you talked about in the beginning when he created Eve. In the beginning, he created Eve, and of course, male and female created in his image, and we're equal in that we're equal in value, we're equal in worth, but we are made very differently from the very get-go to complement one another.
Yes.
And we had been doing a deep study on the word of the helper that is suitable for him, which is, and I'm gonna probably not say this correctly.
Why don't you let me butcher?
Okay, all right.
Ezer Kenegdo.
Which Ezer
It's Hebrew.
is a term that has been used in the Old Testament several times, and usually referring even to a war. It's a warrior term. It's used in war. It was also used to reference God, the Holy Spirit, in Israel's time of help. That it was a very strong warrior, mighty help. And then Kenegdo is an interesting word. Now, I speak 2 languages, so it's kind of interesting because when you speak 2 languages, sometimes things can get lost in interpretation. And I do believe that sometimes if you don't go back to the original language of what the Bible is written in and you don't understand the context, you can lose some of the meaning. And Kenegdo has actually 2 meanings. It's in correspondence to and also against. And obviously in the context that God had given Ezer Kenegdo, it was in correspondence to Adam's need, because he saw that it was not good for man to be alone, which I think most of us women can understand why God would say that it's not good for man to be alone. So, but he designed a woman, and this is before the fall. So we're not talking about roles. We're not talking about the roles that he divided us, but we're talking about he gave Eve that she was a strong warrior woman, warrior help, strong help in his time of need, to be his complement, to be like the right hand to the left hand, so that the work and the labor and everything that tending to the garden would be fruitful. And so it's beautiful, and it's implied that Adam is also her Ezer Kenegdo. So it was an equal as far as shared partnership in duties. Like I said, now we're not talking about roles, and we're not talking about things that happen after the fall, but we know that God wants to restore us to the original. And so we should be looking towards finding that what you guys found is submitting to God's design and purpose in the marriage, and realizing that you two are equally just important of voices in what is done in the business and what is done in the marriage and what is done in ministry. And yet you're working together towards a common goal, which God has placed for you. Now you're not in the Garden of Eden anymore. He's placed you over, other duties.
Right.
But like you said, it's the ultimate partnership. It's the ultimate team, to that even though you're great individually and you could have accomplished many things individually. And this is where the powerhouse comes into, going from partners to powerhouse, because God didn't even just want us to just remain partners. He actually wanted us to become a powerhouse, which means of influence, to leave impact, to leave a legacy, to leave more. So the sum of the 2 people together are going to be a greater impact than if you guys were just individuals and doing your own thing. Right? So it's pretty amazing when you really get into that flow of things. And I cannot believe it, you guys, but this time that we've just had together, like it went by so fast. I don't know what just happened, but
It always does.
Yeah.
we really enjoyed this conversation with you in the partnership aspect, and really having this discussion. And we really are excited for this podcast to continue and grow. And so we will definitely would love to have you back again, you guys, because you are such a great wealth of knowledge. And I know you've got more nuggets of wisdom, the 2 of you, to share with our audience out there. And so is there any last words that you want to say about partnership and the success of marriage and business before we say goodbye?
Dear?
All I can say is, for me, I treasure Don is my husband. Treasure your spouse. You have that person in your life for a reason, for many reasons. And I wouldn't want to go through this life without him.
Yeah, I'll I'll second that.
Are you speechless?
Yes, you did, dear. It doesn't happen often, but it does.
Pastor Speechless, that is a rarity.
Mark that in history, right?
Yeah, you might want to write that down somewhere. No, again, I would say if you're struggling right now, if this is an area in your life that you feel you're vulnerable in, is that you've done well in all of these other areas, but something's not going right in your relationship with your spouse, you have the power to change it. And it just starts by sitting down and being honest with your spouse about where you're struggling, why you're struggling, asking for forgiveness for not including your spouse or not acknowledging your spouse or neglecting your spouse or not empowering your spouse, whatever the situation might be. If you want to get on the road to being a partnership, then be a partner.
That's wonderful.
That is very good. Yeah.
If you want the marriage that you've always wanted, you need to be the one to be the mature one and get off that crazy merry-go-round and make the changes that's necessary for sure. Because somebody has to realize that, okay, what we're doing isn't working. So let's form a game plan.
Maybe since we're also including business in this, marriage is maybe the best investment, one of the best investments. You get,
absolutely.
If you put in a good investment, you get a great return.
It's probably the best return of investment. You're right. If you put in the effort, the work, whatever it is to invest in it, it will never come back to where you're going to have regrets. So absolutely. And John says, I've been telling Jess for years that she is my gift from God. Now I have confirmation. Oh, that's
man.
Cool,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
And Jess really is a gift from God for sure, John. You absolutely hit the jackpot with Jess. So I have to agree on that. So with that, you guys, we're going to say goodbye for now, but we will be back and have more in-depth discussions on what it will take to go from partners to powerhouse so that you can impact this world and leave a lasting legacy. So thank you again, guys. It was great having you.
Thanks for having us. We look forward to being back.
Awesome.
Great. Loved having you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I don't know why I said tuning in. That's such an old term. For watching the live stream and listening to the podcast.
Well, for being old, you look great.
Thank you. Thank you, honey. That's very kind and sweet. So we absolutely will have a podcast on communication because communication is absolutely important to achieve the goals that you have. But if you found value in this podcast, whether you're watching it live or on the replay, please share it out because we know that there are marriages out there who are struggling and really could use a boost or encouragement. And maybe there's marriages that aren't necessarily struggling, but could be better. And so please share this message out. And if you haven't already, come and like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Partners to Powerhouse, Zena Krogadal. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn. So absolutely would love to have your support of your likes and shares and spread the word. Let's get marriages to go from partners to powerhouses and let's change the world one marriage at a time. All right, you guys, have a good one. Oh, and we will be back in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from tonight, and I will make sure I post the reminders, but we'll be back in 2 weeks and we will have a wonderful topic to talk about. So submit your questions, instant message me, let me know what topics you would like to see on Partners to Powerhouse.